Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Aaron Lewis, the Vice President of Public Sector Sales Engineering at Rubrik. Aaron, good to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
And Aaron, the first question I wanted to ask you is the idea of a new model for data security, for data protection that gets agencies, organizations past the old recovery time objective, recovery point objective model, that we need something more holistic, more up to date. Maybe talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, Tom, that traditionally organizations really looked at two things. How much data am I willing to lose, right? That RPO, and how long can I wait until I get my data back, the RTO, the recovery time objective. And that really just doesn't encompass the whole picture. In today's world where cyber threats are really the new DR, it's not just, hey, I've gotten a file corrupted or it's been deleted and how long can you get it back for me? But asking questions like, can I recover my data? Am I 100% guaranteed recoverability? Am I also 100% guaranteed that that data will be clean and will be the data that I want it to be? So we start to get into things like data observability. This is really important as we start to move past the kind of old school idea of cybersecurity simply just being, let's protect the moat, let's protect the fences, and everything inside we just kind of assume is going to be okay. Because in all the cases that we've seen out there where businesses or agencies have been targeted, every single one of those folks have those solutions in place. They have firewalls, they have detection solutions, they have malware prevention solutions. All of those things are there, and the bad actors still get through. So really looking at the data security as being a comprehensive platform encompassing all those things is really, I think, going to be the next important thing for all of our agencies out there this year.
In other words, the idea of, well, we'll roll back 10 minutes or something is just no longer really, in the online age we're in, really that efficient, it sounds like.
It's not. Well, it misses, I think it's part of the equation, but it misses the whole picture, the larger picture, right? Which is, traditionally in a lot of attack scenarios, if you don't have observability and you don't have guarantees around the quality of the data that you've protected, then what traditional administrators have had to do is they say they'll go back 10 minutes. Well, that data is infected. Then they go back an hour and that data is infected, and so on and so on. That's a very time-consuming process with no guarantee for a good result.
Right. And you mentioned, too, the idea of the edge and the perimeter of the network as being the earlier focus of security. And now almost every agency is at least partially in the cloud. So that changes the whole picture in terms of what it is you're protecting and from what vantage point.
It does. It moves the edge, right? It really kind of moves the goalposts, as it were, for where you're going to protect that data. In addition, it increases the complexity, I would say almost exponentially, because now you've got organizations that need to have a variety of different of expertise around securing that data, and the ability to secure the data, whether it's on premises or in the cloud. Those can be two very different skill sets.
So it sounds like you need to think in terms of having one reference image of your data that's incontrovertible, and that's your source of recovery or getting back to where you were in the event of a breach.
Yes, and I think the important thing is having not only that one true system of record, as it were, for in case of a breach, but also having, I'll get back again to that guaranteed recoverability. So knowing that you can recover, as well as knowing that you'll be recovering clean data, no matter where that data lives.
And you mentioned data observability, and that's a word we're hearing more and more in the cyber lexicon, the cyber world. Maybe talk a little bit more about what data observability actually is in practice and why it's important to securing data and protecting it.
Sure. I think in the context of data security, the idea of knowing what you've stored away is very important. In addition, in the past, we've talked a little bit about what the traditional methods were. Data protection was really more of an insurance policy, right? It was something that was there in case files got deleted or a system got corrupt, but it was generally not designed around these wholesale attacks, which are what we're seeing today, whether it be from state-sponsored malware agencies, whether it be from some kid in England who happens to be really good pulling down something from the dark web and leveraging it. But the thing I think that we used to see a lot in the past was simply being able to restore that data was one thing. Now actually being able to have some information, really the metadata around what's in that, provides a lot more value to the business, right? Things like what malware has been stored there, leveraging your protected data to give you information about the whole data estate rather than having to install separate point solutions. Right?
All right. And so what are some approaches then architecturally, technically, do you get to that point so that the organization has total visibility, observability of the data, has that incontrovertible source to restore from, getting away from the RTO, RPO? What does this look like from an architecture and technical standpoint?
Yeah, I think there are a couple key aspects to this. One thing is really getting back to that single platform for data security, right? Allowing each agency, or even maybe a group of agencies, to have a single source of truth. One, it minimizes any kind of risks around lack of visibility into separate point products. It also minimizes the complexity around enablement for those the administrators, right? I think every one of our listeners here today is probably being asked to do more with either with less or with the same, right? And so allowing your administrators to become more proficient in things like data security while still also doing their day job, as it were, around maybe protecting running virtualization or doing other things. There's a lot of value, I think, to agencies that happen. So that's one aspect. The second aspect I think that is really important is a solution that is built from the beginning with data security in mind, an immutable data storage platform, a observability built into the system so that you're not having to install separate third-party applications, opening yourself up to supply chain attacks. So some of those things I think are extremely important when you're looking at kind of an overall data security posture.
And when you mention a single platform, a single source of truth, is that a physical single platform, or is it actually logical, in which case you would have elements possibly in the cloud and on your own data storage on premise?
Well, I think in the world that we're living in today, the move towards SaaS applications, because they have the ability to reach in not only to physical on-premises applications and workloads, but then also manage cloud workloads as well by their very nature of being in the cloud. That, and then the fact that those things can be accessed from anywhere within secure enclaves, secure identity logins. I think that's a really important piece. Right?
All right. And then what about the human part of all of this, the operators? How do they stay on top of this? It sounds like you need to have a good degree of automation to have this going constantly. Tell us about some of the operator implications.
Sure. I think there are two aspects to that. One is there should be some type of automation around protecting the data itself. I'll give you a quick story, Tom. So I was early on in my career. I was like a lot of people in technology. I was on the IT side of things. You get handed, I'm going to manage the backup solution, and that tends to be something that you give towards more junior administrators. And I'll never forget the day, and I'd probably been working maybe 2-3 years. Somebody came in and said, "Hey, we need this server restored because it was corrupted." And I went to go and restore it, and I realized that I had not manually added it to the protection policy, right? That's the world we used to live in, where if an administrator, is fraught with potential for human error, right? In a modern data protection solution, having the ability to say, protect a workload type, and as new workloads get added to that, I think that's absolutely crucial. In addition, then I think when we get back to the observability piece, the ability to have observability that doesn't require a lot of configuration, because that's another potential for security weakness, or a lot of you see a lot of solutions out there that are security by configuration. And if you don't check these 6 boxes in this order, you're not as secure as you need to be. So I think a solution needs to build a lot of that in and leverage things like machine learning and AI to take some of that risk out of the solution.
But the solution then is configurable automatically based on policies, then sounds like, and
That's
also,
correct.
and from an architectural standpoint, then it is hybrid.
That's correct. That's correct. And so having I think the other piece, and you hit on a key aspect there, which is if you define a policy around protection, that policy should then be applicable to all of your workloads, right? Whether they be on premises or in the cloud.
Because you want to avoid too much data removal from the cloud for purposes of protection. You want to protect it there because of the cost of extraction. Fair?
That's fair. That's fair. I think there's a big cost aspect to that. Building a solution that, that's another aspect of I think what should be a modern protection, modern data security solution today, is that it is built to keep data where it belongs, right? And so data that is cloud data should stay in the cloud. Data that's on premises should stay, due to the mass, as it were, of data, should stay on premises. And then we should use the native tools to be able to protect those.
Sure. And for a solution that is accessing the data and indexing it perhaps and obtaining the metadata, that is in a sense an agent going to the data. And in the age of zero trust, can such a solution operate within the zero trust framework that everyone's trying to set up for their agency?
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's a really important piece to look into as well, right? Is making sure that any solution that gets implemented doesn't invalidate a zero trust initiative at an agency. I think that's a key. Things like, dual factor authentication, things like being able to have SAML integration, a lot of the nuts and bolts, even down to real specifics like, are all communications within the solution encrypted? Because there are many solutions that were never really built around that idea, right? And so having that idea built into a solution today, I think is important, because it's really hard to bolt that on after the fact.
And would it be fair to say that then that the Rubrik solution conforms to the framework that's put out by NIST that is supposed to be governing what agencies do, the idea of detecting, defending, recovering, and protection?
Yes, and in addition to identify as well. So there's the 5 pillars of the NIST framework around data security talk about all of those. And so yes, Rubrik, I think, is uniquely positioned to be able to help our agencies with all aspects of that framework.
And we understand you are on the cusp of FedRAMP certification.
We are, yes, we are. We're very excited about that here. It's a long process. Any of your listeners who have gone through that or have been done the yeoman's work of being an agency sponsor, they'll know how that process goes. But we're really excited about it. It's something that we should be announcing here, later on this year.
Anything else people need to know for 2023 cyber data protection?
I think we were pretty comprehensive on the coverage there, Tom. The one last thing I will leave folks with is make sure you're really examining every aspect of your solution. Put your vendors to the test. I know that the folks on my team, we love to be asked questions about our solution, how we fit into things like executive orders, into zero trust initiatives. Really go out and figure out not only what you have today, but also take a look around and see what else is out there. I think you might be pleasantly surprised.
All right, great having you with us. Aaron Lewis is the Vice President of U.S. Public Sector Sales and Engineering at Rubrik. I'm Tom Temin. You're listening to Federal News Network. Let's go back to the studio now for more of the Industry Exchange Cyber.